The Abbasid Caliphate. How Golden Ages Become Memories. What if the greatest library the medieval world had ever seen was destroyed in a single week? And what if that destruction didn't just erase books, it erased a way of thinking that had taken 3 centuries to build? In 750 CE, a new dynasty seized power across the Islamic world. The Abbasid Caliphate overthrew the Umayyads and shifted the empire's center of gravity eastward, toward Persia, toward trade routes, toward ideas. Baghdad became the capital, and within decades, it was the largest city on earth outside of China. By the 9th century, it drew scholars, merchants, physicians, and astronomers from dozens of cultures and faiths. At the heart of Baghdad stood the House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah, not a library in the passive sense, an active research institution where scholars translated, debated, and extended human knowledge across disciplines. The Abbasid Caliphate funded one of history's most ambitious translation projects. Works from Greek, Persian, and Indian scholars were rendered into Arabic, not just preserved, but actively studied, criticized, and built upon. Harun al-Rashid, the 5th Abbasid Caliph, ruled from 786 to 809 CE and became the symbol of this patronage era. His court attracted poets, mathematicians, and musicians, funded directly from the imperial treasury. The intellectual output was concrete and measurable. Abbasid-era scholars made foundational advances in algebra, mapped the stars with unprecedented precision, and produced medical encyclopedias that European universities were still teaching from centuries later. Here's the detail that surprises most people. This intellectual explosion was enabled in significant part by religious tolerance. Christian scholars, Jewish physicians, and Zoroastrian astronomers all worked inside the House of Wisdom, funded by a Muslim caliphate. None of this was charity. Baghdad sat at the intersection of major trade routes, which made the caliphate extraordinarily wealthy. Commerce funded scholarship, and scholarship made commerce more efficient through advances in navigation and accounting. Here's a critical correction. The Islamic Golden Age is often described as a single, unified era of smooth progress. That's a simplification. It was fractured, contested, and uneven. Different regions, different rulers, different intellectual priorities, often in direct tension with one another. As early as the 9th century, the Abbasid caliphs were losing real political control. Regional dynasties, the Samanids in Persia, the Fatimids in Egypt, governed their territories independently, paying nominal allegiance to Baghdad while pursuing their own agendas. Here's the counterintuitive part. Cultural and scientific output didn't collapse when political power fragmented. In some cases, it accelerated. Regional courts competed to attract the best scholars, creating an intellectual marketplace stretched across the Islamic world. But political fragmentation carries a cost that compounds slowly. When the Buyyid dynasty seized control of Baghdad in 945 CE, the Abbasid Caliph became a figurehead, and the central treasury that had funded the House of Wisdom's translation projects dried up almost immediately. The institution didn't close, it starved. Then came the Mongols. By the mid-13th century, the Mongol Empire under Hulagu Khan had swept through Central Asia and turned westward. Baghdad, still the symbolic heart of the Islamic world, sat directly in its path. In February 1258, Mongol forces besieged and sacked Baghdad. The destruction was systematic and total. The last Abbasid Caliph, al-Mustasim, was executed. The city's infrastructure was shattered. Centuries of accumulated political authority ended in days. Contemporary accounts describe manuscripts from the House of Wisdom thrown into the Tigris in such quantities that the water ran black with ink. Whether literal or rhetorical, the image captures something real, a deliberate erasure of institutional memory. But was 1258 actually the end of Islamic intellectual culture? The Mongol sack of Baghdad was catastrophic, but it wasn't a clean terminus. Knowledge doesn't only live in one city. Scholars had been migrating for decades before 1258, carrying manuscripts and methods with them. Cairo under the Mamluks became a refuge. Samarkand under the Timurids would later host its own astronomical renaissance. The network proved more resilient than the node. Here's the specific mechanism that explains the Abbasid era's long reach. When European scholars in 12th century Toledo began translating Arabic texts back into Latin, they weren't just recovering ancient Greek thought. They were inheriting centuries of Abbasid commentary, correction, and original discovery. Algebra is the clearest example. The word itself is Arabic, al-jab, lifted directly from a 9th century Abbasid mathematical text by al-Khwarizmi. When Renaissance Europe built the mathematics that would underpin modern science, it was standing on Abbasid foundations. This brings us back to the misconception worth correcting. Calling it a single golden age flattens 5 centuries of contested, uneven, multilingual intellectual work into a greeting card image. The reality was messier, more fragile, and more impressive for it. The Abbasid case shows how knowledge ecosystems function. Historian Dimitri Gutas, in his study of the translation movement, identifies 3 enabling conditions operating simultaneously in Baghdad: state-funded institutions like the House of Wisdom, surplus wealth from Silk Road commerce, and a court policy of hiring scholars regardless of religious background. Each was necessary. Each was also fragile. When Abbasid caliphs lost revenue to regional dynasties, scholarly patronage contracted. The House of Wisdom didn't close overnight. It diminished gradually, losing funding for translation projects first, then for new scholars, then for maintenance of its existing collections. The pattern is uncomfortable because it recurs. The Library of Alexandria didn't burn in a single dramatic fire. It declined over 2 centuries as Roman imperial funding contracted and its scholarly staff dispersed. Institutional permanence is an illusion the historical record repeatedly punctures. One final twist. Within 2 generations, the Mongol rulers who destroyed Baghdad had converted to Islam and begun patronizing Islamic scholarship themselves. The Ilkhanate court in Persia funded astronomers and historians. Conquerors became inheritors. The Abbasid Caliphate permanently altered the structure of human knowledge. It built among the first documented large-scale international translation networks. It established the institutional model of the state-funded research library. It demonstrated that scientific inquiry could be cross-cultural and state-sponsored at the same time. But the loss of 1258 was real. Scholars who died in Baghdad took knowledge that had never been written down. Institutional relationships built over generations dissolved overnight. Some research threads simply ended, not transmitted, not preserved, not recoverable. Golden ages are always both things at once, fleeting in their political form, transformative in their intellectual output. The Abbasid Caliphate lasted 5 centuries as a political entity. Its intellectual legacy has lasted 12. Those are not the same thing. Back to the question we opened with. What does it mean to lose a civilization's intellectual center in a single week? You lose the institution, and you lose the knowledge that never left it. But the ideas that had already traveled to Toledo, to Cairo, to Samarkand. Those survived precisely because they had moved. Dispersal wasn't loss. It was the mechanism of survival. Look up on a clear night and find the star Aldebaran. Its name is pure Arabic, assigned by Abbasid astronomers who catalogued the sky with a precision Europe wouldn't match for centuries. Roughly 2/3 of the named stars visible to the naked eye carry Arabic names. The House of Wisdom is gone. Its sky is still ours. Which raises a question worth sitting with. The Ubayyid takeover of 945 CE didn't announce itself as the beginning of the end for the House of Wisdom. The funding simply contracted, quietly, over decades. How would we know if something similar were happening now, to a university, an archive, a research library, before it was too late to reverse? The Abbasid Caliphate didn't survive, but the algebra, the astronomy, the model of the research institution, those did. A golden age doesn't have to last forever to change everything that comes after it. The question is always what you build while the conditions hold. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more.